The first time it happened, it was broad daylight, and I remember wishing the sun would look away. We were standing near a busy bus stop, people rushing past with coffee cups and tired eyes, when I suddenly felt the weight of her presence beside me and realized my heart was beating far too fast for something that was supposed to be simple. I thought I was too young for her, too unfinished, too uncertain, and the fear of that difference pressed on my chest harder than the noise of the city. I had no idea that one quiet moment would later rewrite everything I believed about age, timing, and love. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet ways human beings save each other, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Touch. Your support keeps stories like this alive. My name is Ayan Farouk, and at 23, I still felt like I was learning how to stand properly in the world. My days were spent working at a small architectural printing studio, where sunlight poured through tall windows and dust floated gently in the air like slow-moving stars. I handled blueprints, ran large-format printers, and dreamed about designing buildings that felt warm and alive rather than cold and towering. Life was steady but small, and I told myself that was enough while secretly wondering when something real would finally begin. She came into my life on a Tuesday morning when the city looked unusually kind. The sky was clear, traffic moved without anger, and even strangers seemed softer somehow. Her name was Samira Halim, and she walked into the studio carrying rolled papers and an exhaustion that didn't belong to the day. She was confident in a quiet way, the kind of confidence shaped by responsibility rather than attention. I later learned she was 38, a project manager overseeing a redevelopment plan for a community library that had been neglected for decades. At that moment, all I knew was that she looked like someone who had lived several chapters I hadn't even reached yet. Our interactions began simply, framed by daylight and ordinary tasks. She would come in to check proofs, lean against the counter while the printer hummed, and watch the pages slowly emerge. I noticed the way she rubbed her wrist when she thought no one was looking, the faint lines near her eyes that appeared when she smiled at something small. There was no dramatic spark, no sudden realization, just a growing awareness that the room felt different when she was in it, fuller somehow, as if the air itself paid closer attention. The age difference sat between us like an unspoken rule. I felt it in the way I chose my words, in how I reminded myself to keep my distance. I told myself she probably saw me as a helpful kid, someone polite and harmless. I also told myself that was fine, because wanting more would only lead to embarrassment. Still, when she asked about my studies, my interests, my reasons for choosing architecture, I felt seen in a way that surprised me. She listened not with polite nods but with genuine focus, as if my half-formed dreams mattered. Day by day, the daylight scenes stacked up like frames in a film. We crossed paths at the same cafe near the studio, where sunlight spilled across wooden tables and highlighted the steam rising from cups. We ended up walking the same direction after work, past trees casting long afternoon shadows on the pavement. The city seemed determined to keep placing us side by side, and with each shared moment, the distance I tried to maintain grew thinner. The struggle began inside me long before it showed on the surface. I battled with the idea that my feelings were inappropriate, that I was projecting something onto her that had no place in reality. Friends my age talked about weekend parties and casual relationships, while I found myself thinking about conversations, about shared silences, about the way Samira's presence calmed the restless parts of me. I worried that even acknowledging these feelings made me foolish, that I was mistaking kindness for something deeper. Samira, meanwhile, carried her own quiet weight. In daylight glimpses, I saw cracks in her strength. She was often the first to arrive at meetings and the last to leave, her phone buzzing with responsibilities that never seemed to sleep. Once, as she waited for Prince, she stared out the window at children playing across the street, her expression distant and heavy. Later, I learned she had been married young, divorced after years of trying to fix something that kept breaking, and left with a sense that life had passed her by while she was busy holding everything together. The turning point came on a warm afternoon when the power went out in the studio. Sunlight became the only illumination, pouring in with an honesty that made everything feel exposed. Samira was there, papers spread out on the counter, frustration written across her face. Without machines to distract us, we talked. Not about work, not about safe topics, but about exhaustion, about feeling out of place in your own life, about the fear of choosing wrong and the regret of choosing nothing at all. It felt dangerous and necessary at the same time. I confessed, without labeling it, that I often felt too young for the world's expectations, that I worried about being taken seriously, about being enough. She listened with that same steady focus, and in her eyes I saw recognition rather than judgment. She spoke about feeling invisible despite her experience, about being reduced to numbers and timelines rather than who she was inside. The daylight wrapped around us, and in that moment, the age gap felt less like a wall and more like a bridge we were both afraid to cross. From then on, everything changed quietly. There were no dramatic declarations, just a shift in gravity. Our conversations deepened, our silences grew comfortable. We started having lunch together in the park nearby, sitting on benches warmed by the sun, watching people pass. I noticed how she laughed more freely, how the tension in her shoulders eased. She noticed how I stood taller, spoke with more certainty, as if being seen by her allowed me to see myself more clearly. Still, fear lingered. I worried about what others would think, about whether I was stealing time she might regret later. She worried about holding me back, about being judged for wanting something that didn't fit society's neat categories. These unspoken fears built suspense in the quiet moments, in the pauses between messages, in the way we both hesitated at the edge of something real. The moment that finally broke the tension happened again in daylight, because our story never belonged to shadows. We were standing near that same bus stop where the fear had first struck me. The city moved around us, indifferent and alive. She looked tired that day, but lighter somehow, as if she had made a decision inside herself. She stepped closer, lowered her voice, and said something that settled into my bones rather than my ears. Something about how being with me made her forget the numbers, the years, the labels that weighed her down. It wasn't a confession of love, but it was an opening, an invitation to stop hiding from what we both felt. In that instant, my doubts didn't disappear, but they lost their power. I realized that age had been my shield, my excuse to avoid vulnerability. Standing there in full daylight, with people all around, I understood that what mattered wasn't how old we were, but how alive we felt in each other's presence. I felt a calm certainty replace the anxious questioning, and I knew I was ready to step forward, even if the path wasn't guaranteed. Our relationship unfolded slowly, intentionally. We faced raised eyebrows, awkward questions, and our own moments of insecurity. There were days when she worried she was asking too much of me, and days when I worried I couldn't give her enough. But we learned to talk through those fears, to choose honesty over assumptions. Daytime became our symbol, a reminder that we weren't hiding, that what we shared could exist openly in the light. Being with Samira changed me in ways I hadn't expected. I grew more confident in my work, started submitting designs to competitions, dared to imagine a future that felt expansive rather than intimidating. She, in turn, began reclaiming parts of herself she had set aside, taking weekends off, laughing without restraint, allowing joy to exist without guilt. We didn't fix each other, but we created space for healing, and that felt just as powerful. The real inspiration of our story wasn't the age difference, but the kindness we showed ourselves and each other. We gave permission to feel deeply without apology, to start over without shame. We learned that second chances don't always come wrapped in dramatic events. Sometimes they arrive quietly, during a power outage, at a bus stop, under the steady gaze of the sun.